And Judge Ross is going to give us a judicial perspective of what it's like, what it has been like to enforce the marijuana laws. Not just for pounds of marijuana, but we're talking about ounces of marijuana. Next to Judge Ross is Dr. Teresa May. Dr. May is a psychologist and head of the probation department in Harris County. And for those of you who have not been through the judicial system, which I would assume is most of you, Dr. May is in charge of when people get put on probation. So if you're in Judge Ross's court and you get convicted of a crime and you don't go to jail but are put on probation, Dr. May is involved in supervising the type of rules you have to abide by, what type of procedures you have to engage in. And so I guess for a drug type of offense, she would oversee any type of drug testing procedures or any other type of procedure. So she is the person that you have to answer to make sure that you're staying within the confines of the law and not violating your probation. Because if you violate your probation, you go back to jail. Next to Dr. May is Kim Odd. Kim is the Democratic nominee for Harris County District Attorney. She's a native Estonian, daughter of former state senator Jack Odd, and she's a specialist in criminal law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization since '92. Kim served as a prosecutor for the Harris County District Attorney's Office from '86 to '94, where she served as the chief felony prosecutor. She was appointed by then Mayor Bob Lanier as the city's first anti-gang task force director in '94 and oversaw a 40% reduction in gang crime during her tenure. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Kim since she's running for office, although this is not political. And she's a dear friend. From '99 to 2006, Kim was the executive director of Crime Stoppers and led the organization to national record-breaking years of assisting law enforcement in the capture of thousands of violent felons. In 2006, Kim transitioned to private practice and is currently the managing partner of the Odd Law Firm, a boutique litigation firm fighting for the rights of families, individuals accused of crimes, and police officers and citizens whose civil rights have been violated. Is your dad?
Yes.
And you're the managing partner?
In name.
In name only, I think that's mentioned. Kim now, yeah, I know. Kim now seeks to bring her strong track record of public service and 26 years of professional experience to the position of Harris County District Attorney. She is running for DA because she believes that despite the expenditure of tens of millions of dollars, the justice system is failing. She believes that major reforms to our criminal justice system must be implemented if we are going to increase public safety and ensure that no one is wrongfully convicted. To accomplish this, Kim believes that we must stop spending tens of thousands of dollars on low-level drug offenders to jail, on sending drug offenders to jail, and instead send them to work on our bayous and waterways as community service. The recouped savings may then be used for the investigation and prosecution of violent gangs and professional criminals responsible for the majority of crimes in Texas. Kim's platform further promotes a major increase in the investigation and prosecution of white-collar crime, consumer fraud, especially the elderly, human traffickers, environmental polluters, and those who have betrayed the public trust. And finally, to the right of Kim is Ted Oberg. Ted is an investigative reporter for ABC 13. He is celebrating his 13th year with the station this week. He covers everything from political questions to waste and fraud, and has extensively reported on the issue of misdemeanor marijuana possession in our courts. So let me start this evening. We watched the performance tonight and seen a bunch of Republican actors violate the marijuana law. Marijuana is in terms of, I assume that requiring more type of enforcement of jail time is what's been sort of expressed this evening. Kim, from your years as a felony prosecutor, what is the right policy for enforcing the marijuana laws, especially for small quantities of marijuana?
Right now, people serve up to a year in jail for a Class A misdemeanor, 2 to 4 ounces, and up to 6 months for 0 to 2 ounces. And I think that the right policy is not to give people a permanent criminal record for possession of marijuana when it's legal in 2 states and medically available in 24 more. I'd rather see people be held accountable. It is against the law. Do a couple of days of community service, no bail, no jail, no permanent record.
Are you saying it should be sort of enforced like a traffic ticket, like a speeding ticket?
There's existing laws right now. The DA can't make law. I can go to the legislature and I can voice my opinion and I can bring evidence to show what I believe is correct. But we can use existing laws. There's a cite and summons law that allows us to move offenders around jail with a summons and straight into pretrial diversion, which will protect their records. Folks, every week I get calls from people with permanent criminal records. They can't get rid of them. Makes it hard to get jobs. Makes it hard to get an apartment or qualify for a house or an educational loan. And I just think that we're going to look back on these years where we've made serious criminals out of people for marijuana and look at it regretfully. And so I think the proper policy is use existing laws creatively.
Even though it's against the law in Texas, does the district attorney have the autonomy to decide how to enforce those laws? Even though the laws require someone to potentially go to jail for having a small quantity of marijuana, up to potentially 6 months, can the district attorney sort of trump those laws and modify them in the county?
Yeah, we don't have to trump them. The district attorney sets the policy. We have existing laws that allow us to offer people summons straight to court and pretrial diversion. So we don't have to change the law. We just have to use some of the laws that we've got. That is the discretion of the VA. So I would still be enforcing current law. I wouldn't be legislating as the VA. So yes, we do.
Aren't there certain counties in Texas that do that now in terms of lower grade type of enforcement?
Travis County does. And of course, other states have made marijuana recreationally legal. And 24 more have made it medically available. So you've got a patchwork of laws that are unequal across the United States. I think that's confusing to young people. I think it's confusing to a lot of us. And so we have the discretion under the law now to have a reasonable policy and take your money and use it to fight real criminals.
Judge Ross, during your years on the bench, how have you seen laws being prosecuted?
I've seen zealous, by the way, I'm not running for office. I have 2 months, 2 weeks, 14 hours, 15 minutes, 14 minutes left. Then I can really speak my mind, but right now I'm very politically correct. I would like to say that early on in my practice, it started in 1966, any amount of marijuana was a felony, and people went away for a long, long time. The star basketball player in my high school went to prison, and he was an all-city, all-state basketball player. And what they found was a joint. In my practice, I represented a lot of people whose lives were turned upside down by the fact that they had possessed marijuana. As the practice grew and as the years went by, I saw that there was a public attitude that was starting to change. In 1981, when I got on the bench, it was still considered the devil's weed, and it was still looked upon socially as a very evil substance. I'm not going to comment on how evil the substance is, but I do know that public policy, public attitudes, and everything changes to where we've seen a wave of permissiveness as well as peer acceptance, and I can't quarrel with that. My job is strictly to enforce the law. I do know that being a friend, an old friend of Kim Mogg for the last 27 years, I'm not endorsing any particular candidate because both have come up with very innovative ideas, and I think that's wonderful. I think that no matter who wins this election, we will have some forward-thinking district attorneys, whoever it is. Now, seated to my right is a person that has basically revolutionized our probation department. Now, I'd like to throw a compliment her way. We had problems for many, many years, and we had many, many directors, and we finally found someone that is interested in what we call evidence-based practice. I'm going to just say it in a real nutshell. Evidence-based practice says, what has a person done? What is that person's background? And how little does that person need to be supervised? And we're going to have some revolutionary things coming up in the next few years. I'm going to give it back to you, Joel.
That's okay. Captive audience forgot.
I understand. I don't think Kim needs the advocacy tonight. I can sense from the applause in the audience that I think they're on your side. And it is not a political forum, at least from TUTS's perspective. From my perspective, I have my own views, and Tim's on my side. But with regard to Dr. May, with regard to the probation system, what do you see in terms of how many citizens of Harris County are on probation for marijuana offenses? Let's just cut right to the chase.
Well, let me put it this way. Most people don't want to be on probation for small amounts of possession of marijuana. And this has been in discussion probably since I walked in the door in Harris County. Folks have been asking questions. We've looked at a lot of data. Most of what I've seen is people are booking in and out, spending maybe 1 or 2 days in jail, and the case is playing out. So they end up in front of Judge Ross pretty quickly. You know, I think they have a rocket docket here. I mean, if you ever get arrested, you're going to be in front of the judge pretty quickly, which is kind of a good thing and a bad thing. So people are playing out and basically getting a conviction on their records with small amounts of jail time. Most are not taking probation. We actually do have, I looked at our pretrial data because I was able to listen a little bit to Kim's plan and looking at it in the newspaper recently. And we actually already have a few people that choose to take pretrial diversion. So that is being offered for small possessions of marijuana. And it might be good for the legalese here to explain what pretrial diversion actually means in terms of the law. The other thing I've looked at, you know, I've heard a lot about the Cite and Release program. Made a trip to Seattle with some other folks in Harris County to look at some innovative programs there, where they are trying very hard to do things more innovative and to reduce focus on basically a punishment orientation with people who have really drug problems and try to look at a more problem-solving approach. And clearly, the entire tenor of looking at drug use and drug addiction has changed. But here's the thing. I mean, you don't know for sure the person that's possessing marijuana. It could be that's all that's going on, and there could be a whole host of other things going on. So there's plenty of lawyers sitting around here.
How many people are on probation in Harris County for minor marijuana possession?
Maybe 500 out of about 50,000. We have maybe 300. I mean, honestly, most of them are taken, unless they're on for other things as well.
Okay, those are the ones on probation, but then there's a certain number that are just going to jail too, in lieu of probation.
And, you know, I have no control over that, but looking at the data, that's what it appears. Most people are just, hey, I'm in and out. The lawyer probably is advising me to take my time. A day or two is not bad. And they're pleading out.
But they're living with that conviction on their record.
That's true. And I think that's a good thing to think about.
It's bad. It can hurt you. If you go to rent an apartment, it's going to affect you. If you go to get a job, if they have to make a choice between someone who doesn't have a drug conviction, someone who does. Of course, they're going to take the non-conviction. Now, a drug conviction is a drug conviction. A number of years ago, in the 70s, marijuana lost its classification as a narcotic. The federal government decided, well, it's not really a narcotic. But I do want you to know that if somebody does a time served and a $200 fine or $100 fine, it's going to follow them around forever. And I think the fact that both the candidates for the district attorney's office are aware of that and want to deal with it, and I think that's probably the biggest step that this community could take to keep those people who are minor offenders and those people who have made a lifestyle choice, giving them the opportunity to learn the lesson and move on without stigma.
Judge, you and I have talked about it. Look, since we've been here tonight, 3 people in Harris County have been arrested for misdemeanor possession of marijuana. 3 people. A 4th is fixing to be arrested once the clock ticks over to the next hour. It's cost the citizens of Harris County $2,500 at least, just tonight. Not talking about the fines you're going to impose, but the cost that you have paid in your tax dollars to process these people through the jail. In 2012, 11,500 of our neighbors went through Judge Ross's court and other judges. That's 1 every 50 minutes. And they are on a fast docket, but on average they appear before you 6 times before their case is done. That means 6 times they've got to explain to a boss, hey, I got caught with a joint, so I got to go see the judge today. How many bosses are going to put up with that? And so, yes, Kim was out of the gate months ago with a plan. The incumbent DA has come out with another plan, and I think it's probably on all of us to recognize that this is an issue that has become something that the citizens of Harris County want dealt with pretty quick, but you look at the numbers and you look at the cost, it's staggering. Every 50 minutes, and the other statistic that we caught is the average age of someone who takes a guilty plea, and 60% of these cases end in a guilty plea. Average age is 24. Young men, mostly, who don't know the consequences of what they're doing when they take a guilty plea just to get the heck out of court and move on with their lives. And I tell you, we've come a long way since maybe this film was made 80 years ago, but I'm not certain we've caught up in the judicial system to punish those people a lot differently as far as the stigma that they carry because of it.
One thing we're not mentioning is the license suspension. Did you know that a marijuana conviction leads to license suspension? So if you are suspended and you can't drive, it's hard to get to work. So this is an automatic result, and then you have to pay to get an occupational license.
What if you want to get it off your record one day? It's impossible.
You can't.
Yeah. So if somebody thinks that they can plead guilty to a marijuana offense and just have it on the record for a couple of years and not worry about it later, what I'm finding is they turn in their 30s and they can't get the job they want, they can't get licensed. If they want to go to law school or medical school or any type of professional schooling, they find themselves eliminated right away because they have this mark on their record. And it's a mark, and sometimes it's marijuana, but it's just classified as a drug mark. And they don't differentiate necessarily between marijuana, heroin, or any other type of drug.
Can I talk a minute about community attitude?
As long as it's not political.
No. I'm done. The movie came out in the 30s, I believe, and it was calculated to shock and scare everybody. I saw it in the 60s, along with a bunch of other people in the theater, and we laughed. We thought it was the funniest thing we ever saw. Now, we were seeing the humor in it as it applied to that age, the 60s. And now we have satires of this, and people, if you haven't seen the movie, go see it. It's one of the funniest things you'll ever see. Now, if you think that the folks up on the stage were really cartooning the whole concept, you ain't seen nothing till you see this guy on the piano with his eyes wide and just giggling and laughing and his eyes about to pop in his head. You'll laugh. It is a funny, funny movie. Now that speaks to the attitudes of the community. Doesn't speak to my attitude, any individual in this room, but the community attitude. And I think that that's what makes laws change, and that's what makes the whole judicial system grow, is reacting and growing with the community standards and how the community views the social ills, such as the ingestion of killer people.
Talk about lunch. Dr. May, in terms of alcohol, obviously, what causes more deaths in this county? Consumption of alcohol or somebody taking marijuana?
Well, they didn't tell me how many DWIs we had before they hired me in Dallas County. We have a lot of them. I mean, it's a huge, huge problem here.
So it's the driving offense part of it. Even how about driving under the influence of marijuana or a drug?
Well, let me say this. I mean, there is a whole host of folks that are doing both, right? They're smoking marijuana and they're drinking and they're getting arrested for DUIs, and they do have wrecks. They run into you. And they can cause serious accidents, including death. And they have a higher recidivism rate. But I think I don't want to lose the point here, because drug driving is a serious problem. And now, a lot of my colleagues in psychology are looking at more and more folks driving under the influence of marijuana. And what does that do? And how does that impact somebody's ability to stop on time and make good decisions and those kinds of things? So we don't want anyone killed, right? No one does. But I think the point that Kim has made, and that I've seen our current DA make, and that Judge Ross has made, is that what's set up right now isn't working. What I see is a tragedy. I really do. I looked at the data. Probation is about, yes, public safety, but we're about turning lives around. That's really what we're about. That's why I do what I do. And the entire focus in our system, and I'm sure you know, Joel, that Texas has come a long ways. We're actually, believe it or not, one of the most progressive states in criminal justice in this area. There's been a lot of investment on not just looking at people just based on what they did. You're actually looking at the person, and you're looking at their actual risk level, but not just that. What do they need? There are folks that we never even get a chance to help that may need it, right? Because they are bleeding out so quickly. I don't know how to stop that piece. I'm interested in the ideas I've heard from Ms. Ogg and also from Devin Anderson. Both programs, I think, have some promise. But being the probation director, I'm in the fun position of trying to implement some of these things, which sound really, really great. I think we just have to give a lot of thought on how to make it work, how to get it done in the system. How do you get these kids to stop bleeding out so quickly? And that's not just happening with marijuana. Probably that's happening with low-level drug possession a lot, and we're not even getting a chance to help people out.
That's a discussion of a different day as to why a lot of young minority kids are just taking quick pleas of guilty to avoid having to spend the time and the money, and then they have poor records later as a result. That obviously is a serious problem here in Wisconsin as well as other colleges. And I've been in court before, and I've seen these young kids with just no lawyers or bad lawyers just pleading out to crimes that they shouldn't be pleading out to, and their records are forever tainted by it. But how do you help somebody in terms of, obviously, it's a crime and it will be enforced differently, marijuana, if you're driving under the influence of marijuana. That's separate from the possession. Tonight is the discussion about the possession of marijuana, not under the influence. If you're driving under the influence of marijuana, you'll get punished like anybody else would get punished that's driving under the influence of alcohol. But how do you help somebody out that gets caught with a couple ounces of marijuana? How does your probation program even put somebody on the right track to,
That's a great question. It's a great question. And here's the point that a lot of folks are focusing on. Well, here's what we're going to do. We get someone on probation. We're going to do a risk assessment. And here's what we know. There are a lot of folks that are very low risk. You know, just the arrest alone is going to scare them to death, or the fact that they got caught. Most of us would be scared, never want to do that again, and won't come back. So my job in those situations is basically, the impact's already occurred, is to not make things worse, to help them get on track and help them complete probation. And usually, you know, the probation terms, and honestly, we don't have many people on probation with us, are relatively short. And so I don't want to pile a whole lot of conditions on, I have to work with the courts on it, but to help them succeed.
So the real problem is these people aren't getting on probation, they're pleading guilty, serving a couple days in jail a day.
Most of them are. And, you know, there's a lot we can do. Now there are, you know, I do have a pretty significant pretrial diversion population. And I want Kim to explain exactly what that means in a minute. But we have quite a few people that are getting that now. So that does exist. And that is giving people a shot, basically, to complete some programming, whatever they need, stay out of trouble, and get their record expunged. So that is happening, just for people to know out there. I see it. My concern is how many that don't make it to the door, to where we can get a shot to do that. Judge Ross did exactly what I expected him to do, which was to, you know, express the concern that the convictions for kids do stay with them. And I'm hoping parents, even though you think your child isn't listening, I don't know if there's any parents in here who have kids that you might be a little worried about, it's important for them to understand that, you know. And frankly, I mean, if you look at the Travis County program, even when they're getting a ticket, right, they're still being charged with a crime. So they're going to have to follow through with whatever the requirement is. And, you know, I've talked to my colleagues in Travis County, and one of the challenges is a young kid gets a ticket. So what happens with traffic tickets? You know, sometimes they get stuffed in a drawer, they kind of forget about it, those kinds of things. And they're ended up getting arrested and getting in more trouble after the fact. So it is, what I'm happy to hear is that, frankly, our two top candidates for law enforcement are both trying to look at some way to be smarter about what we're doing. And to me, that's fantastic. I mean, that's exactly what needs to happen. And I'm excited about that. What I hope to happen as well is that, you know, the state legislature starts looking close at this and to see, I mean, what can we do to get it actually reduced down to something less, where we're not getting bogged down in these situations.
But I think the other issue is, and you guys will know better, I think police officers feel some pressure and have put some pressure on the system to maintain this as a prosecutable offense, right? Am I wrong in that, Judge, or Kim? No? I mean, I think there has been resistance in the past.
Easy. It's a very easy arrest.
Although it takes time.
It takes the officer's time.
How long does it take the officer off the street?
3 hours at least. So instead of patrolling your neighborhood for burglars, they're booking, arresting, writing an offense report. And not all that will change with the new program, but it will change a lot. One thing I'll tell you I learned, we do sometimes feel pressure from law enforcement about how they want to make drug arrests, but in representing a lot of police officers in my time in private practice, Joel, I've learned that some cops throw dope away. I never knew that. And they tell me that. If it's near the end of a shift, or they don't think it's, for whatever reason, they utilize their discretion. So I think that that when laws are applied unevenly, it causes people to distrust the system. It's not that we want everyone prosecuted, it's not that, but we all do hope to be treated equally. And I don't think that that's happening.
Where are most people, in terms of the marijuana laws, where are most people when they're arrested? Are they arrested? They're not in homes, obviously. But
Well,
are they at bars? Are they in the car? Are they passengers in cars?
they're in minority communities is where they are, and they're out on the street. And they are not generally in River Oaks or Kingwood. Now, I'm not saying that those arrests don't happen, but I'm saying we have an overrepresentation of minorities for drug offenses. That's happening. And it's utilized as a tool to stop people, not the drug laws themselves, but people are stopped, they're searched, and instead of crimes in the neighborhood being investigated, burglaries, robberies, the arrest is made for whatever's in their pocket. And a lot of people in this society are in possession of drugs. So it is happening.
And in your investigative reporting, have you seen more minorities arrested for minor drug offenses?
Of course. But, and I don't think that's news, right? I mean, I think, you know, I mean, unfortunately, 70% of the people in jail are waiting for trial, and of those, probably 2/3 to 3/4 are non-white. And, you know, look, I think that's probably been the case for any number of crimes, not just drug crimes, for some time, right?
Oh, I'm sure.
Well, I've looked at the drug crimes, and it's, in particular, there's a disproportionate impact on young males under 25, black, brown, poor, period. And so I don't think that there's the same...
That's just not for marijuana, that's...
No, that's for drugs. But what I will say is that people, I know that I haven't checked out, for example, burglars, because most people are against that. I don't go to a neighborhood where people say, oh, let's do something easy and nice for burglars. They're not being stopped because of a profile. Burglars are generally being stopped because they're in a neighborhood where there's been crime and they are doing something suspicious, or they're caught in the act, or their fingerprint is at the scene. So I think that what we see in our society is a movement toward evidence-based prosecution, where we want to make sure that we've got the right people in jail. We want to base it on real evidence, and we want to use our tax dollars, which cannot pay for everything, treatment for everyone. It just can't. There's just not enough of them. We want to see it used on public safety. That was the idea to begin with.
What is your plan in terms of what differentiates your plan from the current DA's plan with regard to minor drug offenses?
My plan would include everyone charged with a misdemeanor amount of marijuana. My opponent's plan
Would they
is
be arrested under your plan?
they would be summoned. No, it's different. They would not be arrested. They would be summoned to court. That is not a traffic ticket. That's a summons. If you don't show up, a warrant will issue. A policeman can kick your door. It's a serious thing. It's not like a traffic ticket. If you go to court under my plan, you'll be offered 2 days community service, reducing the 6 average appearances to 1. If you don't want to go work, you don't have to. You can take probation. You can take a straight conviction. It'll be the subject's choice. So with my opponent's plan, I'm a little confused about what she said about they'll be arrested, they'll be fingerprinted, they'll be transported, but that's not an arrest. And I'm not sure how that's going to be reconciled. I don't feel comfortable speaking about her program. I've just heard her say it, and I don't understand how. I mean, my understanding is that's custody. So looks like an arrest to me.
You get a ride downtown.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, according to her, yes, you do. I mean, but I think that's the difference, and maybe the question is why wouldn't you take that person to jail?
Because I want to leave the policeman on the street. That's why. And because I think that we can satisfy the law, the public, that wants people to be held accountable for possession of a drug and not lose sight of what we intended to do, which was make our neighborhood safer. 60% of your tax dollars go to public safety. It ought to be used to make you safer. So the record part, expunging the record, allowing somebody to have a clean record, that's what's important. And what I do like is that this election has moved the current administration into that direction. And that is a step forward, and that's a result of the community, because wherever I go, I find that people of every socioeconomic group, race, neighborhood, really think that we should be focusing on serious crimes. We have real problems, and that's where we want our money spent.
Okay, let's give everybody, I'm gonna give everybody. One more minute to talk. Ted, go first.
I think we've covered the ground fairly well. I think we're at a point where we all recognize, and certainly from our reporting, we recognize that we cannot continue doing what we do. From sitting in Judge Ross's court, I know that his court is clogged with dozens of new cases every week for stuff that we would all consider laughable if it happened to our neighbor. And I think we're at a point where we simply cannot continue to clog courts with what we're doing. And so I'm very intrigued to see what voters decide coming up here in a month.
The fact that it's being reported nationwide that drug policy is a major issue in a district attorney's election is progress. Too long, I think we've been stuck in a view that we just have to do things because that's the way we've always done it. That's not the way it was always done. And it takes people being active and loud and voicing their opinions and going out to vote to make change. And that's the beauty of a democracy.
Well, I'm glad I'm not running for election. Let me say that to start with. I am, as I said earlier, very happy that the discussion is happening with both district attorney candidates. I have been in the meetings helping our current district attorney try to plan. We had a small role in it, even though probation is going to be limited. And my understanding, they're modeling it after what around the country, and you guys might want to Google this, pre-charge diversion programs. And it's my understanding, because HPD and the sheriff were both in the meetings that I sat in, that the goal is not to bring them all the way downtown, is to make sure we have accurate identity. And basically, they're going to get diverted to complete an 8-hour class. And it's my understanding they hold the charge in advance. I'm going to let the lawyers fight that issue out and discuss it. But here's what I have to say about it. I'm just happy to see where we're headed. The discussion is in the right direction. We need to keep going and looking at how we can be more progressive. But we don't want to make decisions just based on one variable, and that is the offense only. There's a whole lot going on with people that we need to think through so we can be smarter. And I would hope and encourage you people, anyone in our community who cares about this, to go to Austin during the session and see what's happening, because I know there's some legislation on the table to try to reduce the small amounts of marijuana possession to a lower offense. And ultimately, I think that's going to be the most practical thing to implement.
A few years ago, I spoke to a group of judges, and I talked about the 3 levels that we have. The first level being the brand new judge, the second level being the judge that's been around, the mid-level, and the third is the old gray men. Dadgummit. I just realized I'm part of that third level, for goodness sake. Well, you know, the new kids on the block are usually the very innovative, and they're full of all kinds of plans for the future. The middle ones are willing to make change, but they tend to be like a middle child. They don't know really who to identify with. And the old ones are pretty set in their way. Well, we're very fortunate in Harris County because we have innovators. We have innovators in the probation department, 2 doctors that run it right now, one sitting over there. We've got 2 candidates that are running for district attorney that are both innovators and both want to do something that reflects the needs of this community. And you have a judiciary that I promise you is responsive and completely in tune with this community. So rather than talk about the ills, I think that we ought to just sit back and when we leave here, talk about the fact that we've made some great strides over the years.
And finally, just so you know, we have a case in our office it's less than 1 ounce of marijuana. It's not even a measurable quantity. And it's going to go to trial because they're going to pursue the case, the district attorney's office. Despite the fact you can't even measure the amount of marijuana, and my client's in a wheelchair. And he's been going back and forth to court for months.
He's got you, Joel.
What? No, we would have had that discussion already. Well, thank you very much for coming this evening. I hope you enjoyed the panel discussion. More importantly, I hope you enjoyed the performance by the great actors. And thanks for coming for a TUTS performance, and thanks for helping to help TUTS out here in terms of supporting TUTS. And it's got some great shows coming up. Go online, and you'll see there's some more underground series coming up. There's one on free speech and some other real lightning rod issues. And we hope to see you again for another type of panel discussion. But have a great evening. Thanks again. Thank you.